When I used to hear the term sing sing, I thought about listening to Ashanti or Beyonce. But I know now that sing sing has nothing to do with belting at the top of your lungs about a way that you feel. Sing sing is about paying the ultimate price for something that happened. And I can only imagine if you find yourself here, you might learn something that no song will teach you about what happens next. I'll tell you something else I know. And you guys may have heard this earlier, but sing sing is derived from the Indian term sink sink, meaning stone upon stone, because it's built from the marble by the nearby quarry. You know what else is built from marble? The kitchen and floors of my childhood home in Long Island. Black marble, to be precise, because my parents were really good at buying and selling drugs. So yeah, I didn't grow up in the streets. I rode bikes with my friends, but it was in the quiet suburbs. Our house was super cool. My mom, she ripped out the attic, so we had these windows that went right up into the ceiling. It flooded our home with so much light, we didn't need to turn the lights on until the moon came up. Better yet, she turned our basement into a recording studio. So I was surrounded by people who were creating all the time. Our house was filled with people, music, and activity 24/7, and I never wanted for anything. I thought that our way of life was the most normal thing in the world. I remember on April 20th in school one day, everyone was going crazy about National Weed Day, and I couldn't understand what was so special because I'm thinking to myself, doesn't everyone's parents smoke a blunt over breakfast? Even the names they gave us were crazy. My name is Goldie, and my brother, his name is Platinum. It didn't scream accountants. But something I did notice, with all my random relatives and parents' friends coming and going all the time, the person in the room who held the most status was the person with the most money. And that person was rarely my dad, because he was in prison. He still is. I guess he wasn't so good at his job after all. So stone upon stone. I think about that a lot. It's the act of building something. One stone upon another stone upon another stone, until in this case, you build a multiple-story maximum security prison. You know what's another thing we build? We build a life, or at least we try. And when we talk about building a life, it's a vertical trajectory as well. People say they want upward mobility. They want to climb the ladder. They want to move up in life. They want to raise their status. So when we talk about ambition, we're reaching for the stars. As an entrepreneur, we're building from the ground up. We're scaling up. We're setting our sights high. We're aiming for the top because success requires growth. And it seems like up is the only direction we can go. And that's a lot of pressure. So I think of my family now. My dad in his jumpsuit, my mother in her dry cleaner's job, feeling like she kind of lost her crown, my older brother, Platinum, who just got out of prison last year. And it makes me wonder, what if success wasn't just about building up? What if it was about building out instead? I'm Goldie Harrison, and I'd like to redefine entrepreneurship. That's what I'm experimenting with. And I'll tell you why, but you're gonna have to take a journey to my childhood, all the way back to 2009. When I was in middle school, my brother and I threw this huge party in our backyard. We called it Goldie and Platinum's Barbecue. And people talked about it for months afterwards. They still talk about it today. And I was on a high, just thinking about the next one and how I can make it better, and the next one and how I can make it better. And it was around the same time I picked up a camera and shot my first music video on a $40 budget. I mean, I didn't win any Grammys, but I was voted the most creative person in my graduating class. Creativity and community. That's all that mattered to me then, and it's what matters to me today. I always knew I wanted to be successful. Not by the way I saw it growing up. I didn't want to sell drugs. I wanted to create dope stuff like Pharrell Williams. I didn't necessarily think about building a business. I just knew I needed to build a resume. So I applied to college. Most of my parents' income wasn't on the books, so I qualified for aid and I got in. So let's just say the hustle is a DNA thing. I feel like, in many ways, my college experience was a cliche. I played college basketball. I was a point guard, I'm small. I was a captain 3 or 4 years. I explored my sexuality. I started a photography club. And of course, I experimented with my personal style. My brother and my mother weren't happy about any of it. They accused me of pretending to be white. And I think the real issue for them were my Crocs. Most importantly, though, I was the vice president of programming for 2 years, and I was also the student activities manager for 2 years. Much of what sounds the same, but what I was able to pull off in both of those roles meant that I was well on my way to building that resume. But once I got out into the real world, I learned a tough lesson. At one point, I'm working at the Facebook offices. I'm curating events and pop-ups. I have free snacks, free breakfast, lunch, and dinner, a sweet paycheck, and I should have been cruising, but I wasn't. I never stopped collaborating with artists and hosting events on the side of whatever day job I had. I consider myself, first and foremost, an independent creative. And what I discovered was that for Black and brown creatives, the resume doesn't always matter. At work, I'm curating events where people have access to everything. They've never been overlooked or barred entry. But in my side hustle, I'm denied events because my theme is said to be too urban, or it's too much hip-hop, or there's too many Black people at this event. They don't say it so explicitly. It's coded language, and trust me, I know it when I hear it. A landlord once told me we couldn't have more than 4 people in my creative studio. It was a 1,500 square foot space. He made some comment about the foot traffic. And truth be told, it's because he didn't like who was wearing the shoes. I bet you never heard of a landlord agreeing to give you your deposit back in full in New York City. He practically called us an Uber too. That's one of the reasons why I started 24 Hours. Because you can't build anything as a creative, a resume, a business, or even gain recognition if people are always trying to shut you down. There's a quote from Jay-Z where he says, "We as rappers must decide what's most important, and I can't help the poor if I'm one of them. So I got rich and I gave back, and to me, that's a win-win." Jay-Z makes it sound really easy. But he speaks about being a drug dealer before he made it big as a successful musician and entrepreneur. He did whatever he needed to do to get into the studio, to lay down an album. And he's lucky he didn't end up here in the process. Because I know firsthand that we all can't be as lucky as Jay-Z. That's why I opened up 24 Hours Creative Studios. I wanted to fill a void in the creative market where people of color have always been overlooked. I wanted to create a hub where Black and brown creatives can make their ideas and dreams come true. And it's 24 hours without the H because it's a place where we all belong. So when I say I'm building out, I'm talking about building a network of many instead of an empire ruled by one. I'm talking about building a safe space, not a fortress built of stone upon stone that imprisons or oppresses, but a studio flooded with light where creatives like me can realize their talents and cultivate them without paying the price for dreaming. I'm talking about redefining entrepreneurship as the success of the community over the success of the individual. 24 hours is a business. I'm an entrepreneur, and I don't need to make $1 million. Success for me is if I can keep my community growing, and I can continue to make awesome work. And I hope that maybe one day, other entrepreneurs like me might start thinking about what their success looks like too, because then maybe moving up would be easier for everyone. And maybe one day, those stone walls with the cramped stone cells would stand empty. Thank you.